The black people's problem is no longer hungry bodies, but hungry minds.
Shouting loud and clear, feeling proud, yeah, 'cause black is beautiful, you know. Say, brother, the waiting years are long, it's time to rise. Black power is what we're talking about. Say, brother, the black man sings, sings with freedom, 'cause freedom's beautiful, you know. Say, brother, you're looking out of sight, your natural looks uptight, and black is beautiful, you know. Say, brother,
Power to the people. I'm Jim Spruill. In the early 60s, integrated education was thought to be the key to good education for black Americans. In recent years, it has become apparent that the quality, not the color of the educational environment, is the significant factor. And the quality and effectiveness of any educational system must be determined by the relevance of that system to the students it's meant to serve. The need to make educational programs meaningful to black people has become our major concern. The black student in the white world of a university campus is offered little that will contribute to the realization of himself as a total person. The omission of black curriculum and black faculty and of more than a minimum of fellow black students allows white students to continue their ignorance of black America and deprives black students of the cultural development which is considered an integral part of the education in the university. At university campuses throughout the country, this deprivation leads to tensions, frustrations, and ultimately to conflict. Some actual headlines that have appeared in newspapers recently. At Northern Michigan University, 150 black students clenched their fists during the national anthem, seeking classes on Afro-American culture and more black teachers. At Washington University, students sat in seeking more black studies. At Wisconsin State, students were suspended after demonstrations demanding black history and black faculty. At Kansas State, there was $500,000 in damage caused by fires. At San Francisco State, after more than 13 months of sit-in demonstrations, shutdowns, administrative hassles, student and teacher strikes, arrests, rallies, verbal and physical attacks from the state's governor down to fellow students, turmoil continues. Representatives of students and teachers from San Francisco State visited Brandeis. January 8, 1969, Brandeis University Afro-American students seized Ford Hall.
I am on strike because San Francisco State College is the bellwether of American education today. I am on strike because San Francisco State is a test of whether unions, collective bargaining, black studies, and higher education will prevail.
Meanwhile, at San Francisco State College, 1,000 students tried to block off their campus, but police clubbed a corridor through their picket line. 8 persons were arrested, 2 more were injured.
On January 8, 1969, at 2:30 p.m., acting out of sympathy with students from San Francisco State College and with their younger brother and sister students from the King and Timothy schools in Roxbury, members of the Afro-American organization at Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, took over an administration building, Ford Hall.
Demands are non-negotiable and must be answered in black and white with the appropriate signatures. The demands are as follows. 1, African Studies Department with the power to hire and fire. This means that the committee must have an independent budget of its own. 2, year-round recruitment of black students by black students and headed by a black director. The number of students in the TYP program should be double next year, and the administration should support and actively campaign for necessary funds. 3, there must be black directors for the Upward Bound and TYP programs. 4, immediate action on the part of the administration to hire black professors in the various departments. Establishment of an Afro-American Center designed by black students. 6, written clarification of position of the TYP students within the university structure, encompassing the areas of financial aid, admission to Brandeis, criteria for satisfactory work. Expulsion of the white student who shot a black student before the Christmas holidays. Brochure must be accepted in the present form or only with changes accepted by black students. The brochure must be published immediately. Intensify the recruitment of African students in the WINGS program. And there, we would like to see the recruitment of black students who are in economic needs rather than, say, students totally from members of the aristocracy in Africa and South America. 10, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, full scholarship for on and off-campus black students. This should include transportation from the TYP program on up to graduation from the university. And may I add also that I've been harassment by officials and other dining hall officials at the university, and that also has to cease. Ricardo will now read, Lloyd will give a short history of the harassment, the changes that we've had to go through here.
Well, the statement we prepared is as follows. We, the black students of Brandeis University, declare our unanimous support of the efforts of liberation waged by our brothers at San Francisco State College and the Cabinet of the King Timothy Schools. The racist reaction of the just demands of our black brothers is not unique to that college or to the school board, school committee of Boston, but has manifested itself throughout the academic institutions in the United States, and especially here at Brandeis University. Our efforts to confront the administration with demands that both ex-President Sacker and the present President Abram, deemed justifiable, in quotes, principle, has proven only to be a subterfuge of white supremacy. We shall continue our efforts to promote the rights of black students and all black people to earn respect of our manhood in all quarters of this racist society. Now, Lloyd, you want to...
We applied for and got a budget from the Student Council, which handles all student funds on campus. We worked with that budget, brought out some other black people around the country, Stokely Carmichael, Cleveland Sellers. Then in April, Dr. King was murdered, and on Sunday following his murder, the white students on campus wanted to get together and have a guilt session or something, I suppose. So we decided to try to organize them around some demands, and we spent, I suppose, most of the night talking to them. And then we went and presented 14 demands to the administration the following day, which was Monday, April 8th. We split the demands up at that time into immediate demands and ones which were long range. The immediate demands at that time were an African Studies department headed by a black man, recruitment of black students by black students and directed by a black man, employment of black people at all levels of the university, 5 Martin Luther King Jr. scholarships, full scholarships. The long-range demands were
10% of the student body black by 1971. Afro-American Studies concentration, again headed by a black man. A graduate scholarship for black people who wanted to go to grad school and were willing to teach in the black community for the first 5 years after they got out of grad school.
Well, we told them that we'll find you black students, give us $2 an hour, hire 5 or 6 of us, and we'll go out and find you the black students. We had a response of over 3,000 people who were interested in Brandeis, and we tripled our enrollment of black students on campus, as Lloyd said. One of the demands now is to further intensify this, because there's now this big backlog of black students that we have to get in contact with, and yet the university is dragging their heels on these points because they don't particularly care to look over this big backlog, it seems.
Okay, I take it now we can, kind of throw the thing out to the group, and if there are things that you have to say.
Saying, well, we want more black students so you could make them into more middle-class white. I mean, it's an African studies thing. It's just one part of a whole university. This is, well, it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. Everything else is so white-oriented.
The whole problem with the black community is that there hasn't been a group of people with skills, so-called middle-class skills or whatever you want to call it, who have been oriented to helping the masses of the people. They have been oriented to becoming white people. But it seems to me that on all, I think that there's a fight that has to be fought on all fronts. And like the white university, this is not, what we accomplish here will make a difference, and I'm sure that if we, when we get what we want here in San Francisco State, and it will encourage schools, black students at schools, both black and white, to work for changes, because the black universities function on the same values and standards as the white universities do, and that's why just having a black administration in itself isn't the answer. You have to have, as the man Bill Middleton, who spoke to us today from San Francisco State, said, you have to have a black as opposed to a Negro university. And I think the Afro-American Studies Department, controlled, as we conceive of it, to be controlled by black people. It will be operated in the interests of black people. We'll be teaching, learning things that will instill the proper values and attitudes that we need to have. And I think that is a substantial step, and I think it will make all the difference in the world, or be the basis of making all the difference in the world for change. You know what I mean?
I understand that you wanted the dean of the faculty to bring me over. I just as soon talk by myself, but I think it might be helpful to have
Okay, this is the way to go.
You go up and talk. There's no reason. This is the way to go. Let him bring in who he wants. Okay, no. Let him talk, man. I don't care, but Demondopoulos, I think, would be very helpful. What do you want to say? Yeah, send him. Demondopoulos? Demondopoulos. Peter, come on in. Understood through the faculty. You wanted me to come, and I am always delighted to talk to students. I don't know of any occasion on which I've ever refused to do so. So I'm delighted to be here. That the faculty this afternoon met and passed a resolution. I'm in sympathy with the resolution of the faculty. I think it's a just and fair resolution. And the point, I think, of the resolution is that the faculty representing a very central part of the community do not think there should be negotiations in a university under threats of coercion. The dialogue should be free and open as amongst reasonable people interested in the common good. Now, is there anything else to be said?
Mr. President, do you understand the demands? If not, I could read.
I understand them. I read them, and I assume, Roy, these demands were never presented to me. Ever. Except, I don't think this is a perfect institution. Not by a long shot. I think there are many things around here that can be improved. And I would like to improve. And I would like to have your counsel and your suggestions. So, I'm here gladly to listen to you. When you leave the building, I'll be delighted.
Although the Brandeis Afro-American Group has stated 10 demands containing 32 components, the one basic issue is not dissimilar to that in public school situations. What is the decision-making role of students? The Brandeis Student Group demands that an Afro-American Studies Department be established and that they select the chairman. Faculty members throughout the country shudder at the kind of precedent that would be set by permitting students to select the chairman of a university department. As a university administrator, Brandeis President Morris B. Abram does not himself have the privilege of making faculty selections. Traditionally, faculty members choose new colleagues from among their peers. Impasse. The faculty won't give in, the administration lacks authority to give in, and the Afro-American students cannot give in. Meanwhile, with each additional 24 hours of their occupation of Ford Hall, Brandeis functions better and better without the building, thus weakening the students' advantage.
I don't think they're coming this way mainly. I think they'll come probably the other way, which I hope they do, because I don't want to meet the man, as we always go around saying.
Are you afraid in a certain sense, or scared?
I'm afraid, I admit that. But at least if I get attacked and if I survive, I'll come back. I mean, like, if the man gonna meet me, gonna hit me, I hope he kill me. That's my belief.
Why? Why would you rather have him kill you than hurt you?
Because I think I have enough scars on my body to prove that I'm tired of this nonsense and this crap that I've been taking.
Since I've been at Brandeis, I've seen white students' attitude towards black students. They write notes on your door. Several students found notes on their door and say nigger and other kind of things and stuff like this. White students call you boy.
I think that most of the kids here who are young have accepted a position and they're willing to struggle with the position. I think when you're young, you often deal with the ideal, and sometimes that is good, and sometimes it pushes an issue, and the issue in this particular instance is racism, and it has to be dealt with a kind of third world view. And if you can't deal with it like that, then you're always going to get caught up in the man's negotiation process, which is, really a subterfuge for white supremacy.
And then the white students feel that they're being racist because, what are we doing? We're just standing here. They can't accept the idea that they're actually irrelevant to the whole thing. And so therefore, they got to get indignant, and they're afraid to lose their balls. That's all it is.
The blacks in this school, just like white students, are in a position of powerlessness, and the only power that they have at the moment is the fact that they're inside Ford Hall, and that power is gone as soon as they leave that building, and that's the first criteria that the president of the university has put upon negotiations. It seems absolutely absurd. That's not what I call negotiations.
My door has and always will remain open to any member of the Brandeis community, faculty, students, or administration, who have grievances to present. They represent the firm policy and practice of this administration. I met with the dissident students in Ford Hall and asked them to vacate the building so that we could begin the negotiations of grievances under conditions befitting members of a university community.
But the major thing here, I think, is that there are some demands made to the university, not once, but twice, And these demands, I don't know, you know about these demands. In any event, you know, the demands were not implemented, and those that were implemented, as I said in my statement, you know, were just proved to be a sort of subterfuge of white supremacy. Yeah. It's not an easy thing for a black kid under scholarship at Brandeis University to say, to hell with, you know, my future in this academic world. Either I can have it so it will be relative to me, or I'm not going to have it at all. It's quite of a hell of a decision. And to have so many black kids make this decision, I think it's, you know, a tremendous demonstration that they're together, that a new breed of black man is being born, and that America better wake up to this fact.
It is doubtful if Brandeis or any other major college institution understands the nature and the needs of their Afro-American students. Efforts toward this understanding must be demonstrated by action and implemented by changes. To discuss the significance of the actions by Brandeis Afro-American students and to help bring about a relevant educational atmosphere, Say Brother has invited a group of individuals, each particularly qualified to speak on the issue. Their discussion will be modified by Henry Hampton.
Moderated, Jim, I hope, not modified.
Moderated.
Good evening and welcome to Say Brother. It's been 8 days now since black students at Brandeis University first took over Fort Hall, and the confrontation still continues. Tonight we have several guests from Boston's black university community to discuss with us the issues, the involvements, and perhaps to offer some prophecies on the future surrounding the situation at Brandeis. To my extreme right is Ms. Doris Francis, who's a student of journalism at Boston University and a native of New York. To my immediate right is Mr. Ricardo Millet, who is one of the students from Brandeis. He is a graduate, but he is also a graduate of the undergraduate school or something. He is presently a graduate student in the field of social welfare and community organization. To my immediate left is also another student from Brandeis who came here from Fort Hall to discuss the issues with us this evening, and this is Randy Bailey, who is a major in sociology. To his left is Mrs. Bernice Miller of Jackson College. She's an associate dean at the college. And to her left is Skip Griffin, who is a student at Harvard University, is chairman of the Afro-American group at Harvard. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to read a statement from Dr. Lawrence Fuchs, who is a professor of American civilization at Brandeis. Dr. Fuchs was scheduled to appear on this program. Quote, upon his arrival at the studio, he decided it would be more appropriate not to have a white professor on a program devoted mainly to a discussion of black feelings and opinions on the concerns of black students at various universities in the Boston area. And we thank Dr. Fuchs for his understanding. To begin with, it's been 8 days now, and Ricardo, what is going on at Brandeis at this present moment?
What is going on at Brandeis, I think, is sort of a microscopic experience of what will be going on in the United States. We have a group of black students who have determined to make this community, that is Brandeis community, and the educational experience it has to offer, relevant to them. And they have decided, we have decided, to make this experience relevant to us by demanding certain conditions, minimal conditions, which would make it relevant to us.
Randy, do you think the danger of a violent confrontation is past now that it's settled down to at this point, 8-day process?
The position of the students in Fort Hall is not one of violence. We are there demanding our rights as students of a university, as black students, demanding the right to get relevant education, and we have not threatened violence. We are stating we are in this building to get our demands. We have not stated that we are going to have violence. We have been threatened with violence, but we are not, stating that we're going to bring violence.
Do you think the situation will resolve itself peacefully then?
I hope so.
B.
When we say will it resolve itself peacefully, what would you consider a resolving of the situation?
Finally getting recognition that black people in a university are going to have education relevant to themselves. This is all we are stating. This is an issue of black people having relevant education. This is not an issue of student power, as was clearly demonstrated in the film.
And you've said this because
Yes.
I've been listening to the broadcast. When, at the very beginning of the film, we heard a young man say our demands are non-negotiable, has this at any point been spelled out as to exactly what you mean, that we're here to stay until our demands are granted, which is what non-negotiable means? They can't be cut down. There's not going to be any attrition. That's it. Has this been said?
Yes.
I mean, specifically, out of the category of non-negotiable.
Yes. In a communication to President Abram, we stated why. We stated that the demands are minimal. The university has already agreed in general principles. They have agreed that they support these demands. They have agreed to them since April 8th, 1968, immediately after Dr. King's murder, when we presented them. Now what we are stating is we want the implementation because we have been negotiating since April 8th at that time. And we are stating that we have not had this situation resolved. Ricardo, would you like to speak?
Well, I guess you said it.
Let me ask you a question. You're a black administrator in a predominantly white college. Jackson College is part of Tufts University. And it could very easily, it's conceivable that you might get caught between this kind of response on the part of black students and the administration. What are your feelings about what's occurring at Brandeis right now?
Well, of course, immediately we're hoping that we'll be able to respond to the needs of our students so that we don't get caught. That's a heck of a bind to be caught in. And as a tightrope walker, who walks that line.
How do you walk that tightrope?
I don't know how one does it. You do it one day at a time. It's like being an alcoholic, You just walk it and you hope you don't fall off, and you hope you do it satisfactorily. But I have a feeling it has something to do with a third ear. You sort of feel what, well, I feel it because I'm black. I kind of feel what's wanted there. That probably is one of the problems of the Brandeis kids. There's nobody who's black, who's high enough up in the administration to communicate across the lines without going through all the channels. Like you say, well, I know how they feel, and I do know how they feel. And I know because I'm one of them. It isn't they. It's only they and I because they are students and I'm not. That's the only
Let's
difference.
focus right there for a minute. I think this is important. And Ricardo, as a black student and a predominantly white, predominantly is not really adequate to express what some universities are. But in a predominantly white institution, where do you go as a black student to talk to someone who can offer an understanding ear about your problems? And there are specific problems as a black student in that circumstance. Who do you go to at Brandeis?
Well, this is a funny question for me because I've been at Brandeis for 5 years. And the first year I was at Brandeis, 1964, there wasn't many people you could go to because there weren't many black people around. But at the present time, who do you go to? You go, of course, to your black brothers and sisters, students. And I must add, this year, because of increased enrollment and because of the demand by the black students that we needed a black advisor, Mr. Lathan Johnson, or black advisor, has performed this role very adequately. He is a very black person, and he is a person who understands the needs of black students and who has been trying to communicate this need to the administration.
Now, what's his role in the university itself?
Well, right now he's been given many titles. The black students prefer to think of him as our black advisor. The administration prefers to think of him as the assistant dean of students. But in realistic terms, he is indeed the black advisor to black students. Other than this, there is the Afro-American Society. This is where most of the black kids go. We hash out our problems. We have seminars each week in black ideology, black thought, black feeling. We iron out our own problems. We've tried to bring soul food to the campus, have our soul parties, and just being minority at Brandeis, as you said, a predominantly white university, the necessity of feeling black is more overwhelming than it would be if you were at an all-black college.
Another predominantly white institution is Harvard. Skip Griffin, Harvard seems to have avoided the kind of confrontation that Brandeis is undergoing. What are some of the factors in that avoidance?
Well, I think each university is different in its response to black students. Harvard has not taken a rigid stance like Brandeis or some of the other schools. They've, to this point, been somewhat understanding. However, you know, the whole process of negotiation seems to be slowing down, and we still haven't had a black curriculum developed. I think the main reason why there hasn't been any conflict at Harvard is precisely because they're trying, or they seem on the surface to understand the problem and are trying to move towards some solution.
Do you have some plan by which you can determine if they're moving fast enough or if they're moving in directions which you've actually required? In other words, you know, at one point do you say things are not happening quickly enough nor happening to our satisfaction?
Well, that point comes February the 11th when the faculty decides whether or not they're going to approve the CEP's recommendation to establish a Black Studies department and to hire black professors to head up this department and to establish a Afro-American Center as a place for, you know, where black people can go and socialize and discuss ideas about what they want to do in the future. To this point, Harvard has a process through which you go through to make any innovations in the school, and the CEP is the first major step, and they have approved the program.
CEP is?
Committee on Educational Policy.
And is there an executive job involved there? Will there be one single person, for instance? Are you demanding that you be allowed to choose that person?
Well, we're demanding that there be 2 people to head up a Black Studies department and that they be selected by a committee of students and faculty members. You know, we would like to think, well, we, like Brandeis, feel that it is necessary, essential that we, you know, approve the person who's selected to head up this department.
Doris, you go to another university which seems to have been part of what had trouble. Boston University was the scene of a black takeover. I believe it was the administration building.
Yeah, it was the president's office.
President's office. And yet that was successfully resolved without a violent confrontation.
Well, I think the major difference between BU and Harvard or BU and Brandeis is that there are different personalities involved, and we happen to have a president who was chosen because he's a very good-looking man and he's a perfect PR man, and he never comes off looking badly in the press. And he, when you know, it became known that the building was taken over, he held an immediate press conference, and he immediately worked to see that things would be done. And as a result, we have these things that people at Brandeis and people at Harvard are asking for. We have a center. We have, you know, also increased, you know, the enrollment of students, and they've made room in the dormitories for Roxbury students to come and live, you know, which is something they didn't do. If you live near enough school to commute, they usually wouldn't give you a dormitory room, but they have made efforts to see that black students from, you know, the surrounding Boston area, you know, could live on campus.
Were the university students at Boston University able to choose the person who heads up programs mainly concerning blacks?
Well, as a matter of fact, the man who heads the center, John Cartwright, I understand that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with him. People like to toss around words like Uncle Tom, and they call him an Uncle Tom. I know the man personally. He was in my school, a professor in my school, a public relations professor. BU is divided into schools, and in my particular school I'm in, he was a professor, and he did me a very great favor once because I was a black student, and I feel that the man is trying. The kid's main gripe with him is that he is, part of the administration. He tries to work with the administration for the kids, and everyone is, in their sort of bomb-throwing bag these days, and so there's a lot of dissatisfaction with him. They want to depose him, but they haven't got a real case.
Randy, I've been listening to radio talk shows this past week, and you've managed to become the starring topic of conversation. But, seriously, you are risking quite a bit. You're risking an educational future. You're risking conceivably bodily harm. What series of incidents took place to bring you to the point where you were willing to risk, a future and good health to achieve a certain goal?
Well, as I stated, on April 8th, 1968, right after Martin Luther King's murder, we presented a series of demands to the university, which was spoken to in the film. And one of those demands was the setting up of an Afro-American Affairs Advisory Council, which would be made up of 5 administrators, 5 faculty, and 10 students, 7 black and 3 white, which were going to make sure that these demands would be implemented. Now, in July, President Abram, before he became president of the university, became a member ex officio of this committee so that he would know what he was getting himself into when he became president of Brandeis. And then he chaired this committee since his inauguration. Since September, he's been chairman of this committee. And this committee has been trying to get these demands implemented. Now, the demands that we have presented are the same demands that we presented in April, but except for number 7, because number 7 happened right before Christmas and not at that time. And we have been negotiating these demands through this advisory council. And what has happened is that we have not gotten what we wanted. We asked for an Afro-American and African Studies Department. What we got was a concentration, in fact. And now what we are stating is what we have to have are these things which have been negotiated all this time.
I'm trying to reach for that personal decision-making level. One of the young men...
You see, one has to take into consideration the whole history of black people in this country. It's not only the present situation at Brandeis, it's what that situation and the confrontation symbolizes. It symbolizes a demand by black people to gain power in an environment that influences their lives. Now, a lot of these men and women, I should call them, and not kids, because they have made this decision, come to realize that their father before them, their great-grandfather before them, have been living in a country which have not allowed them the right to be men, which have not allowed them the right to assume the decision-making processes which influence their lives. And these men and women in Fort Hall are demanding the right to be that men and women, and they're willing to die. I mean die for this right. It's a simple matter of power. It's the whole way you achieve victory. We have to achieve victory the way we want it. We do not want it handed down to us like, well, this is a piece of pie I'm going to give you because you behave a good boy. And this has been sort of the general way in which victory has always been given to the black man. And we're not taking that anymore. We want victory the way we've outlined it. We want a piece of that power. Either you're going to give it to us or you're not. We hope that this seed, this temperament, will be one which would be planted at Brandeis and grow and blossom throughout the United States. That's why I stated earlier in the program that what's happening at Brandeis is a microscopic example or model of what will eventually happen in this society.
Kind of look, in view of Colombia, for instance, which is, one of the first, takeover type situations, places like Colombia and this recent takeover at Harvard, the white students sitting in on the faculty meeting, and the, the results that at Harvard they were put on probation. I think they were suspended at Columbia, and nothing has happened at Columbia in spite of all the blood, all the pictures. How is the decision reached to take over the building? What makes you believe in the efficacy of taking over the building in view of the fact that people who've taken over buildings have only failed, with administrations and with schools?
Well, you're asking me what was the rational plan behind taking over Ford Hall other than any other place?
Yeah, taking over Ford Hall rather than any other kind of demonstration. Why that sort of a demonstration in particular?
First of all, Ford Hall houses the communication, the switchboard for the university, and it houses some valuable equipment. Plus the fact it houses the one little room where Mr. Johnson, I said it before, the black advisor, has his office, and it's one room or center, ironically, that black people have come together to hold their meetings and to speak with Mr. Johnson and so forth. And ironically, that's the building we happened to be in the moment we made the decision. So things just happened like that.
I've got to challenge one thing you said, Doris. You said that there have been failures, but for example, in San Francisco State, I think by no stretch of the imagination is that a failure, particularly because anytime you force the people in the state to confront the trustees of that university and their rigidity, people like Rafferty and Ronald Reagan, and actually begin to create significant changes in the university structure, or at least pose the questions about change. It's not a failure.
But a state college, I think, would be different than a private college. Do you see what I mean? People wouldn't be paying taxes, and people would probably have a lot less at stake, the public. Something like Columbia, a highly private university, something like Harvard. Say Harvard is one of the most powerful businesses in the country.
Grayson Kirk, past president of Columbia, would agree that the students had failed. But
no, well, when Mark Rudd was here, he said that they had achieved nothing, that all they got was that the dean's office doors were open. And he said that in spite of the fact that that there was all this fighting and everything, that he said that it had done nothing, the demonstration to change Columbia.
The fact is that this is not another Columbia. What we are in fact stating is that there are not black faculty people at Brandeis. There is a visiting lecturer, but there are not permanent black faculty people at Brandeis at present. What we are stating is the black people at Brandeis now consist of the students. And this is not a just student power. It happens that we are students, but the essence is that black people have to control their destinies within the white institutions of this country to make it relevant to us. And we are not approaching this, merely on the level of student power, like at Columbia. This is an issue of, are black people going to control our destinies in the institution? At Brandeis, the case is that the only black faculty member that there is at the moment is a visiting lecturer. And so the thing is that we don't have this is not the same thing as Columbia. This is not just student power. This is the whole issue of, are black people finally going to be able to control them? We are not stating that we want the student power of Columbia. We are stating, do black people have the right? We are putting this at issue. We state black people have the right to control what is their destiny within the institution. At Brandeis, it happens to be that the students are the people.
Yeah, well, don't you think that student power is involved if students are going to choose a faculty head?
Well,
isn't this a big issue? This big issue that Abrams is against.
No. Skip? I don't know. I think there's a danger in interpreting moves made by black students as student problems per se. Because I like to think that black students are an extension of the black community, and that the struggle on universities is just an extension of the struggle of black people. And I think the rationale behind taking over a building comes out of the understanding of the relationship between the powers that be and black people. I think black students today understand that we are powerless people and that these universities are power groups. And we understand that power never concedes anything without a struggle, whether it's a moral struggle or a physical struggle.
And this is exactly
and this is what we have to deal with. The other thing is that taking over a building represents a new form of protest, a non-acceptable form of protest. And this whole manner is hooked up in gaining one's freedom. If one protests by the rules which have been set down by the power structure, one is really not becoming free from the man. He's still under the man's grips, you know.
Yeah, let's follow that. Bernice, you know, you are a person who's got one foot in the academic community and the other very distinctly in the black community. You know, where are we going from that perspective?
Well, I was going to say one thing, and I think we ought to clear that up very carefully. I would think that if we sat here and talked very much about we can talk about the tactics, because we've seen those, you know, taking over the building, but I'm sure the tactics are a part of a huge, you know, of a strategy that was very well planned. And if this is true, and we do think of the black campus as a faction or a part or an arm of the black community, certainly we aren't going to go into a large conversation about strategies on the air. I hope not. I'm certainly not going to be a part of that. So that would, you know, that would take care of that. I think it is really very true that large power groups do view power in a mercantile sort of way, like a discrete item, and if we give you some of it, we have less for ourselves. And I think there's another way to look at power. It can be shared. I think this is what we're talking about in the community, that when we govern, we wish to govern in a group of students, parents, and community leaders. This is the organizing principle behind the King cabinet. I think if I'm reading you, this is what you're saying. I don't think that you're really saying what it's been interpreted to us as. I think it's exactly what you say it is. Right. That if you take it out of one group's hands and give it to the other group, then you have the same kind of situation accruing. What you're saying is that you want a group of people of your choosing, with representatives from each segment in the university, to sit down with each having an equal vote to choose the persons that are going to do this thing that you want done. Is that what you're saying?
What we have sent to the administration, the form, the whole question here is the selection board, who's going to select the director for the Afro-American Studies Department? Now, the proposal that we sent in a while ago was that the 3 black students of Brandeis would be on this committee, and 3 black academicians, which we would choose, and the dean of faculty from Brandeis, who is white. We would accept this person on the committee, but this would be the committee. Reverend Virgil Wood stated this very eloquently yesterday in the Martin Luther King birthday service, which I attended, which I spoke. And he stated the issue very clearly, that this is the area of black culture. I think that all of us here agree that when it comes to black culture, which is in essence the Afro-American African Studies Department, that black people know what black culture is. I'm sure we have had, you know, courses where we see that when the students are the only, when black students are the only black people in the room, it becomes a process of white people picking our brains to find out what is it like to be black. Now, we already know what it's like to be black, and that is not the issue of the Afro-American Studies Department. We already know what it's like to be black. And for us to sit there and to answer to white students, you know, this is what it's like to be black, we aren't getting anything out of the course. And what we want is black people there controlling this, and we are stating that it's not the selection board that's going to control the department. The selection board wants to make sure that we get the right director. We want to state, once we have examined every possible person that we can come up with, that we have chosen the person that epitomizes what we want at Brandeis, what we as black people, and I would assume black people all over the country would assume that, you know, this is what we call, you know, the person who is going to lead the way at, in this department. And then that person is free. The selection committee is dissolved. That person starts through the university procedures in, you know, directing that program. Now, we have stated, you know, we want a department with the right to hire and fire, which clearly states that we don't want, the selection committee does not want to control that department. We want to make sure that it gets off, is set off right by a black person, which we have full confidence in, which time the selection committee goes into, is no longer in effect. And we assure that this person, the director or the chairman of this department, is the one who is involved in the hiring and firing. The selection committee clearly stated in that demand is not that the selection committee control the department, but that the department chairman control that department. And I think this is the issue right here raised by this. Are black people who know exactly, you know, what it's like to be black going to sit in black courses to have white people ask us what it's like to be black? Or are black people going to be running this program and working within the framework of we already know what it's like to be black, in which the white students will get out of this, plus the added dimension of black people demonstrating what black art is. This is the whole issue of the program. This is essential if any black studies, as we call it, Afro-American and African Studies Department, is going to be of any relevance to black people and to white people. Now it's just relevant to white people. They're asking us what it's like to be black. We're telling them we aren't getting anything out of it. And this is the situation that we've been at.
Let me ask if we can clear up one other thing here. There's been a lot of confusion about the number of demands of 10, and the president said something about 32. What is the
I think
fact?
Randy can address himself to that question more explicitly than I can.
As I stated, these demands had already been negotiated. They already knew what these demands were. And we presented them in shorthand form. Now, stating just, you know, what the demand was. The administration said, we don't exactly understand what you want. So we wrote out, under each demand, point by point, you know, what this demand means. And that now they've added this up and state this is 32 demands. Now, an issue right here is the fact that we have stated that the brochure be sent out, the brochure called The Black Student of Brandeis, be sent out immediately. We have been writing this brochure, and the administration has been editing it. You know, we started on June 9th, 1968. Now, the answer of the administration is the fact that the brochure has already been sent to the publisher. Now, what we stated in our point of clarification is that the brochure go out immediately, and any future thing which the administration asks the Afro-American organization to do in behalf of black people be done by black people. Now, we want a recruiting program which the administration says they're going to give us. Now, we need a film for recruiting. This is going to be a vital issue. Are black people going to be able to make all the film, do the editing, or is the administration, who is mainly white, going to tell us what is relevant to other black people? This is the only issue here. The administration has not addressed itself to this particular issue. And this is why we are still in the building. They have not addressed themselves to this issue. They have not said yes, they have not said no. We're waiting for that answer. Yes or no.
Let me ask you another question here. Do you think that what's been occurring in Fort Hall has been fairly and accurately reported in the white press in the city of Boston?
Well, I don't think you can fight a black revolution with the help of a white press. Lately, in the last couple of days, the press has been attempting to be a bit more objective about it. You know, like newspapers, we try to allow only black reporters in. They most probably try to report objectively what's going on in the building, and of course they have to send it to the Home Office, and the Home Office is going to pick the most controversial aspect of it for editorial papers. They have to sell their papers, and they're also white.
Do you think it's been basically, in the last couple of days, reasonable?
Not totally. It has improved in the last couple of days. What I think has sort of counteracted the sort of false and equivocations of the press is that we've gotten this black bulletin out, which has been written inside of the building by the students inside of the building, and this has been the most objective report or press release we can say we've had.
Has the university made any offers for the use of their public relations department or help of that kind?
No, the university have not.
I knew the answer before I asked. Very quickly, can we just get a round-robin opinion here of is this kind of seizure and confrontation process going to continue? Skip?
Well, he just touched upon a point that I'd like to extend on a little bit. I think confrontations will continue, but only if the process of negotiation fails. See, what most people don't realize is that confrontation or seizures are not the first step. These people have gone through a process of negotiation. The people at San Francisco State went through a process of negotiation. We at Harvard have gone through a process of negotiation.
But you think it's going to continue in that form?
Well, if the negotiations are not fruitful, then you have to resort to other forms of protest because, you know, I mean, the demands are essential to the survival and development of our people.
We only have a little time left.
Nice
but
if we didn't have to go college by college, you know, as I say about the black community, school by school or neighborhood by neighborhood, and we wouldn't have to go this long route and finally end up with a frontal kind of thing. But I have no feeling that we won't have to go that route. And I believe what you say, so that it is true that we're going to have to bring it out in the open after it's all been negotiated out, and then it comes to what will you settle for. That's really what the last stage of the negotiation means. Will you settle for this?
we both hope very much the same. I'm sorry we're out of time. I found it an enlightening and interesting experience. I'd like to thank all of you for having joined us tonight and wish especially Randy and Ricardo the best of luck. I'm sure you were going to make it. If not in this particular instance, then we will all make it within days. Black Power on the university campus. Slightly altered, but equally effective. Say, brother, thanks you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Good evening.